Good morning, Way Cool friends and family. I'm tuning in about 30 seconds early here, just to kind of remind you that we're gonna get started here making our Mother's Day brunch. And so this is a really cool way to learn how to make crepes and quiche, and then we're gonna decorate our very own Mother's Day cake for our moms, and we're gonna do that by painting our cake. Now, we're not painting our cake with paint, of course. We're gonna paint our cake today with watercolors made out of food coloring. And I'm going to show you how to wrap this whole cake in fondant a little bit later for dessert. But before we do that, we're going to jump right in here and we're going to talk a little bit about the rest of the things that we're going to make today, and that is our quiche and our crepes. And so this was our part of our Mother's Day brunch kit that we offered this week at the Way Cool Cooking School. It's been such a pleasure for us to offer these kits for all of our Way Cool friends and families as a way to stay connected with you guys and cook with you guys at home during this time. And so in this week's kit, we've got everything that we need to make our quiche, and we've got everything that we need to make our crepes. And so they came in little kits, and all of our baking kits, we try to include as much stuff as we possibly can in the kits to make it as easy and as fun for you to cook along with us at home. If you are cooking directly along with us today, live, I hope you had an opportunity this morning to pull out all of your stuff and create your cooking station so that you're ready to play along with us here in our Way Cool kitchen. Typically this weekend is a really, really busy weekend for us as part of the hospitality world and a lot of different places where our weekend is generally filled with Mother's Day tea parties and family cooking classes and Mother's Day Chopped and Mother's Day Cupcake Wars. And so this year was a little bit different for us, but we are so honored that we get to provide these kits for our families and hopefully have a little bit of fun. And for all of our young chefs watching out there today, I hope that you're making all your mother's brunch on Sunday or earlier. I think mothers should be celebrated every day of the year. And so you don't have to wait till Sunday to make them brunch. You can make them brunch every day. With that, I do want to remind you that our cooking projects today are going to use the oven. They're going to use the stove. We're going to use a knife. We're going to use a pizza cutter. And these are all items that, unless you have permission, you should have a grown-up there to help you. Or an older sibling that is comfortable using those, so that they can help you too in the kitchen if you're making this a surprise for mother. The other fun thing that this kit had today, before we kind of get started, as people are jumping on and watching, hi everybody, I'll kind of give some shout outs here in a little bit, is our packages this week came with a secret, top secret DIY decorating gift for all the kiddos out there, so that there's a present in there that you get to decorate and give to your moms. I'm not gonna ruin the surprise, but those came with the kits here today too. We're also gonna announce a little bit later, as we do every week, the kit for next week. I hope that you are ready to have an adventure, because we're gonna monkey around a little bit with that, so I'm gonna do that. And then I am super, super excited to announce that we are going to bring our very first adult online cooking class that's going to be featured a 3-course meal dinner, and we're going to show you that a little bit later too. All right, let's jump right into our kitchen. First of all, I hope you've all washed your hands, keep it clean, and we're going to make our quiche first, and then we're going to pop that in the oven. And while the quiche is baking in the oven, we're going to make our crepes. And then after we get done making our crepes, we're gonna show you how to make the cake. So that's kind of how the day is gonna go. When you're making brunch or dinner or breakfast for your families, it's always kind of important to remember, and I've said this before, kind of work backwards in your head to when you want everything to be done. And then you can kind of know where to start with your recipes. Because if something needs to be in the oven, that allows you time to cook and do another project in your kitchen. All right, quiche, really super, super great. We're using a pre-made pie crust today for our quiche, which is one of the most awesome kitchen hacks. Thank you to Pillsbury and all the other dough people who make those for us. You, of course, can make your own pie dough if you like to from scratch. But this is kind of a good way to let little fingers get in the kitchen and not have to worry about making pie dough and then making the filling for the quiche. And so quiche filling, quiche is French, and my Minnesota, South Dakota French accent is not 100% so today. So please, if you speak French, forgive me. But quiche is a French dish. But the cool thing about quiche is that every culture kind of has this awesome egg baked dish. And so if you've ever had a frittata, that's the Spanish version of this dish. There's Italian versions of this dish. And so a baked, and in the Midwest, sometimes you call it egg bake, and it's served a lot at Easter time too. And so it's all kind of different ways that you can take, and I love quiches on Sundays because it allows me to clean out my refrigerator so that I can put leftover cheese or meat or vegetables into my quiche. Today's quiche is going to be a cheddar cheese, spinach, bacon, and onion quiche. But first we need the base, we need the batter, and so that is a mixture of eggs and heavy cream. What could go wrong there? That's like delicious, yum. All right, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take and we're gonna just add in 1 cup of heavy cream, and we're gonna pour that into the base of our bowl. So I have my clear glass bowl that I love so I can see what's going on, and then I've got a whisk here handy so I can incorporate all the ingredients together. So I'm gonna do this, and then I'm going to grab my little egg cracking bowl that I have here. And this is really handy because especially with dishes that use more than 1 egg, I don't want to crack them all in there and then end up with a shell at the end of it. So I'm going to crack my eggs one at a time into this little dish, and then I'm going to add them into my big bowl of heavy cream. And how I do that, like always, and if you've seen this before or you've been here, you know, when you crack an egg, you want to make sure you hold on to it so that it doesn't go anywhere. And so I use my Lego hands. So they're like little Lego dude hands, and I'm gonna take and I'm gonna crack the egg enough, not that it goes everywhere, but enough that I hear it go crunch, and I hear the crack on the side of the bowl. And so I'm gonna give it a little whack, there we go. Use my thumbs, my egg diggers, and I'm gonna dig into that shell, and I'm gonna drop that right in there. If you compost, these go into your compost bin. I'm gonna get them into our bin over here. No shells, I did good, dump that egg in. All right, I'm gonna keep doing that with all 6 of the eggs. So in these kits today, we gave 8 eggs away with this kit. And so I've already taken the 2 out that I'm gonna need for crepes a little bit later. And so I'm gonna crack these 6 eggs into my quiche mixture, making sure that I have no shells as I go, which is really great. Using the same technique every single time so that there are no shells in there. All right, 2 more to go. Hiya, thumbs in, there we go. Drop that in there. I'm doing really good. I'm 5 out of 6. Can I get the 6th one with no shells? I'm gonna jinx myself here. Here we go. Drop it in, boom. 6 out of 6, no shells. Again, if you get a shell in your egg, that's why we use this little bowl. It's okay. You can just take a bigger chunk of the shell, scoop it out, and it acts like a little vacuum cleaner or magnet, and it attracts to the other part of the shell that's in here that you don't want. You can kind of just scoop it right out. All right, so we've got that in there. I've also got my handy 2 towels ready. I've got my wet towel always and my dry towel so that I can wipe my hands off. I also have a little sanitation towel over here to get all the germs off my fingers from the egg. Okay, next thing, we break out our whisk. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take and I'm gonna kind of bop the little eggs on the head, and I'm gonna start to incorporate those yolks into the mixture by tapping into the bowl first. And then I'm gonna take and I'm gonna start wiggling it in little oval shapes. This elliptical movement, the oval shape movement, not only incorporates the eggs into the cream a little bit better, but it also adds a little bit of air to what we're doing. The other thing that's gonna help agitate and bring everything together is we're gonna add some sandpaper to our eggs. And for this, I mean salt. So I'm gonna take and I'm gonna sprinkle our salt right on top of it here and season that and get that in there. And the salt kind of grinds up against the eggs and the cream and makes it all come together. That is kind of a good trick too. If you want a really fluffy scrambled egg, make sure that you add a little salt and water into your eggs before you add them to your frying pan, because that again is gonna add a lot of air and kind of add a lot of volume to what you're doing. Okay, got that in there. I'm also gonna season it with a little bit of black pepper. This is, of course, they always say season to taste. Well, I'm not gonna taste this now. This is a bowl full of raw eggs. And so when they say season to taste, I always say do about, depending on if the meal is for 2 to 4 or 6 to 8. 6 to 8, I always say a half a teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of pepper. We'll have you a good seasoned base. 2 to 4 recipes, 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper is a good way in your head to remind you if you're cooking and it says salt and pepper to taste and it's something you really don't want to taste or shouldn't be tasting raw. Same thing holds true if you're doing a seasoned ground turkey or anything like that. You could always season later on too, but that's gonna give you your first kind of seasoning base. All right, now what we have next is we have to dump this base into our pie pan. Thank you, Chef
You're
Lynn.
welcome.
Okay, so here's our cool pie pan, done. Yay, pie pan, dough is ready. Straight from the freezer. Not even gonna worry about thawing it. This is so thin, and the aluminum is so it transfers heat so well that if I left this out on the counter for like 5 to 10 minutes, it's gonna get kind of like mushy and soggy. And if that happens, just stick it back in the fridge or the freezer for a few minutes and let it kind of firm up a little bit. I'm gonna take and I'm gonna dump my egg mixture into our quiche tart pan here, our quiche crust.
I'll grab that.
Ooh, it's like perfectly level. All right. So I'm gonna take and got this here. Now this is something that like a lot of times until you know something, you just don't know something. I always thought when you make quiches that you just dumped everything in the bowl and then dumped it into your quiche pan. But what can happen sometimes is that heavier things that we love, like bacon and onions and cheese, will sink to the bottom of your bowl, and then when you pour it into your quiche tart pan and your crust, all of your fillings kind of end up in one spot in your quiche. And we want to equally divide everything in our quiche. So by adding the eggs first, this is a cool thing because now I can take my real little bacon bits here and I'm just gonna take them in my hand and I'm gonna sprinkle them all over. They're still gonna sink because it's still heavier than the egg mixture. But now I know that they are evenly throughout my quiche and not just in one spot. That's not fair. That person gets the bacony piece. That's just not fair. All right.
What if somebody doesn't like bacon? What are some other proteins they could maybe put in there? My favorite's ham, actually.
Ham?
Yep.
If they don't like bacon, who are these people?
There might be.
Here's a really good thing though. As we kind of know, certain of our favorite things like bacon and ham are not as easy to get as they once were 2 to 3 weeks ago. So yeah, you could dice up lunch meat and put it in here. If you had some leftover turkey lunch meat, dice it up and throw it in if you want to have the protein.
Or cooked chicken.
Cooked chicken. Yeah. One of my favorite quiches, which is kind of like, of course, me because I love seafood, smoked salmon.
Oh, of course.
Smoked salmon with dill.
That sounds good.
Yes, I love that. I would even do an octopus quiche. I'm pretty
sure
I would.
would.
I'm pretty sure I would. Okay. The other things we're going to add in here is we're going to add in some cheddar cheese, and so I'm going to sprinkle that all over the top. This, if you got the kit, looks like a lot of cheese, but we love cheese, so we're going to put in a lot of cheese. It's about a half a cup. Oh, and look, I got one cheesy spot. There we go. Now the other two items I've saved till the end because we got to do a little chopping and dicing. And so I've got like a petal of onion. It's just like a little tiny wedge of onion. If you want more onion, add more onion because it's your quiche. Do it how you want. I'm not a big fan of white onion. In my house, I always use shallots, and I would probably use like a half of a little baby shallot for this. But what I'm gonna do is if you have little fingers, it's great to break it down into these little petals, and then you can use a small paring knife, or you could even use a plastic like picnic knife and use the ones with the teeth so that you can use the claw and hold it with little fingers and saw back and forth. My paring knife has no teeth, which means it is not meant to saw, it is meant to slice. And so I'm gonna do the same technique and I'm just gonna slice this into little tiny pieces. And so this is a good way to practice cutting is these little petals. Our little bit older chefs, if you have a paring knife, and the easiest way to do this is still the claw. Doesn't matter if you're 3 or 93, I'm gonna tell you to use the claw every single time. It's gonna prevent your fingers from getting cut. Most importantly, it's also going to prevent you from ruining any manicures you may have. And then I'm gonna hold my knife to meet you. Knife to meet you is the best way to remember how to hold a knife and make it comfortable in your hand. You would never shake somebody's hand like this, I hope. Knife to meet you. No, knife to meet you. And whether it's a little knife or a big chef knife, that'll make sure that you're holding your knife safely and securely. And then with the claw, I'm just gonna take and I'm gonna cut down through the middle of my wedge so I get those little tiny petals. And then I'm gonna rotate that stack about 90 degrees, use the claw again, and I'm gonna cut down using my paring knife, moving my fingertips back every time and do the little diced onion pieces. All right, so we've got our diced onions there. And again, the whole point of doing this after the fact is to make sure they're evenly divided. So I'm gonna take and I'm gonna sprinkle those over our quiche as well. And then the last thing I'm gonna put in is our spinach. So we all got a little pouch of spinach here. It's probably about 1/4 of a cup of spinach that's in there. Sprinkle those leaves out. And this is a really cool thing. This is a thing you can do with the kitchen scissors. I know, you thought I wasn't gonna break them out, but I've got them. You stack all your leaves up, and with your fingertips, and remember where your fingertips are, because kitchen scissors are sharp, you're just gonna take and we're just gonna give it little snips and let the spinach fall down and rain on top of that quiche. And so some of the spinach is going to sink to the bottom, and some of the spinach is gonna stay on top and kind of get caramelized and give you a good color. The little baby stems here, because we're using that little baby spinach, you can throw those right in your quiche. It will not matter. And I'm gonna take and I'm gonna finish up here my spinach. And then we are gonna take and I'm gonna put this pan, I'm gonna make sure that the spinach is all over the place, and I'm gonna give it a little jiggle and let some of that spinach sink to the bottom. We're gonna stick our quiche onto a parchment lined baking sheet. The parchment is not necessary for this. What the parchment does is it prevents you that if your egg were to overflow on your crust, it spills onto parchment paper and not a egg bake onto a baking sheet. So we're gonna do that. It is a nice way to prevent the bottom of your oven from getting dirty also. So we're gonna stick it out right in the middle. Now, the other thing that we learned while doing this is that the crust does not take very long to cook, but the egg does take a little bit longer to cook. And so, Chef Lynn, can you give me some tinfoil?
Yeah, certainly.
All right, one of the things I really wanted to show you here today is how to wrap a pie crust in tinfoil. And we're gonna take the pie crust off when there's about 10 minutes left of our cooking time in the oven. But this happens a lot. You're making a pie, and you put all that work in it, and then you peek in the oven, and the crust is really golden brown. We're gonna say caramelized. I don't like to use the B word, the burn word, but it's really caramelized. And the way to prevent that is just with a little bit of tinfoil. So I got a nice big old piece of tinfoil here, and I'm gonna take and I'm gonna fold it in half first, because they don't need to be wide strips, but they do need to be long strips. And then I'm just gonna use that fold as my guideline to tear the tinfoil. So I have these nice sheets, and I'm gonna take and I'm gonna fold it in half, and then I'm gonna fold it in half again. So I've got probably about 1.5 inches to 2 inches wide strip by about 18 inches, if I had to be measuring. And then I'm just gonna take and I'm gonna wrap it around the lip of the pan, and I'm gonna fold from the edges of where my thumbs were holding it around the crust and secure that in place around the lip of the crust. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna protect that outer edge of the crust so that when it's baking, the radiant heat isn't like beating down on it and causing it to caramelize faster than we want it to. And a lot of that is because crusts have a lot of butter in it, and butter has a lot of fat in it, and the fat is caramelizing and it's cooking and it's turning brown. And we don't want a blonde crust. Eventually we want it to turn golden brown, but we don't want it to be a brown or black crust quiche. Now, we're gonna pop this in the oven and we're gonna let that go for a little bit while we make some crepes and some crepe batter. The other thing is sometimes you get forgetful. Maybe you forgot your aluminum foil crust protector and the crust gets a little too brown. All you gotta do is snip that right off and make a crustless quiche. The whole thing isn't ruined. The whole thing in the kitchen is almost never ruined. There's always kind of ways that you can do that. The other thing that you can do is you can serve it as like an inverted quiche, which is really kind of fun, where you cut the crust off, you put a plate on it, you flip it over, and then the crust is on top, and you can put herbs and cheese on top of it too. So there's usually always a hack to save a dish. And that's what we're here for. That's what we love teaching. Okay, next thing, crepe batter. So I have got another glass bowl with a whisk, ready to go. Of course, in my kitchen, when I don't have like 800 bowls like I do here, you just wash the bowl that you just used and you use that big glass bowl again. I get that, that's fine. We're gonna take, and this quiche is or crepes I should say, these crepes are a very basic crepe recipe. I like it because you can kind of adjust the recipe a little bit depending on how you're gonna use the crepe. Like if you're gonna use it as a sweet crepe or a savory crepe, you can kind of adjust the recipe a little bit so it's the best flavor that you want. So this base is 2 eggs, a cup of milk. We borrowed a cup of milk from our neighbors across the hall because we were out of milk today. So I got a cute little cup of milk. I've got a teaspoon of vanilla because I'm doing a sweet crepe today. If I was doing a savory crepe, I would probably leave the vanilla out of that. And actually, wait a minute, this vanilla is not for this, Chef Lynn. I grabbed the wrong thing. This vanilla is for our whipped cream that we're gonna whip from scratch a little bit later.
Right. That's right.
Because this is a plain crepe. Okay, if you're gonna do a sweet crepe, you can add vanilla into your crepe too. I do that so often, I kind of thought about that. We actually talked about it yesterday.
Yes, we did.
A little bit of vegetable oil, that's gonna be the fat that binds it all together. You can tell that this is live, right? Because we're going, we're moving. And then I got 2/3 a cup of flour. All right. 2/3 cup flour, 2 eggs, 1 cup milk, 1.5 teaspoons of vegetable oil. That's your base for crepes. This crepe base, you can then add salt and pepper to if you're gonna do a savory one, vanilla to if you're gonna do a sweet one, a little pinch of sugar if you're gonna do a sweet one. I like to add nutmeg to my crepes. I'm always loving ways that you can add like spices into your crepes to kind of give it a little extra. You can add some chopped up dill and herbs into this if you wanted to do a savory crepe. But for us, we're gonna do this plain crepe because we are going to fill it with whipped cream and strawberries and make our homemade whipped cream. All right, here I am with the crack again. Pop that in there, no shells. There we go, 1 more to go. And then I am 8 for the day, Lynn.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right, in there. I did it, 8 for 8. It's pretty impressive.
We don't have any extra eggs either.
We have no more extra eggs. You know, you get that point at home when you're cooking and you look in your fridge and your pantry and you're like, I really need to go grocery shopping. That is where we are here at the Wakefield Cooking School. And we could not be more delighted that we are in that place. So thank you to all of you for making sure that we get all of this stuff on our grocery list today. I'm gonna add in the vegetable oil right now. Throw that in there, give it a little squiggle. Again, I'm bopping them egg yolks right on the head and I'm mixing that up. Here we go. These crepes also call for a pinch of salt, and that is for the same reason that we did the pinch of salt before, to kind of agitate that egg and get that all mixed in. The difference between this and regular egg batters is that crepes, we really don't want a lot of air in. And so once I get those yolks broken down in here, and you can see like it is just yolk mixed up, I'm gonna switch my technique to the one I told you never to do. And that is I'm gonna go in circles because I just wanna stir everything up. I do not wanna add air anymore at this point. And so I'm gonna take and I'm gonna add in about half of my flour mixture and I'm gonna stir this up and get that mixed together. And then I'm gonna add in my milk and then I'm gonna add in the rest of my flour. Okay, got the milk here.
You're gonna have to take the seal off now.
Oh, that's good. Never drink it if it doesn't have the seal on it. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna add in my milk. If you get it too bubbly and you notice that it's really foamy when you're stirring it, what I usually recommend doing is you take your batter once everything is mixed together and you just set the whole bowl of batter in the refrigerator. You can actually kind of give it a little tap before you do that. And that is going to allow you to let the air kind of rise to the surface so that you don't get a lot of bubbles. So crepes are a flat pancake. There's nothing in here other than the egg that acts as a leavener or a lifter, or in my world, a poofer. So there's no baking soda, there's no baking powder, there's no yeast. We want a nice thin cake with barely any lumps. And so I'm gonna just keep going in circles because I don't want any lumps in there. But the air bubbles, what'll happen is because the pancake is so thin, when you put it on the hot pan with the butter, the steam that's created underneath of it, if there are bubbles in here, will pop and your crepe will look very much like the surface of the moon. Very, very cratery. And so I don't want it to be too cratery. So again, going in circles. What Chef Lynn has done here now is she reached behind me and she put the butter that we had in a little dish in the microwave. You can use butter or you can use like a non-stick pan spray. Either of them would work to grease or oil your pan before you go to make the crepes in the pan. But you do definitely want to have a pan that's heated up, ready to go when you are ready to make the crepes. This batter can be made, I would say, like 4 to 6 hours ahead of time. So, I mean, maybe even more. If you put plastic wrap on this, you can make the crepe batter the night before Mother's Day and then have the batter ready to go to make fresh crepes on Mother's Day. The other thing that you can do is you can actually make the crepes and then reheat them. And so if you wanted to make the crepes themselves, the little thin pancakes ahead of time, you could reheat them and do that way too. This crepe batter is really, really nice and light. And that is going to be something that you could even use. I'm going to share one of my mama's secrets. My mama makes manicotti, and it's like the best manicotti on the planet. It is legendary manicotti, and she does it by making crepes and rolling up the filling, as opposed to using big tube noodles like some other dishes. And so you can use your extra crepes if you make a lot of extra crepes and make your own manicotti. So that's a little mom trick I'm going to share with you today. You'll have to write her for the recipe though. I don't even think I know it. No, it's in their church cookbook, I'm pretty sure. As far as we know, her recipe is just like, she puts magic into it. Okay, I'm going to turn the camera here, reaching over here, and so that you can see Chef Lynn. And Chef Lynn, you're at the stove anyway.
I guess I could do it. Sure.
Show us how to flip some crepes.
All right, I was just going to say one comment about, Mary talked about the bubbles inside of this. You'll see a lot of recipes online for making crepes, and they tell you to put everything in a blender and zap it. But just like she said, they say then to place it in the refrigerator and let it sit for a half an hour, so you're decreasing the bubble mixture inside of it. While Mary was talking, I was heating up a pan. And I have a 1/4 cup measuring cup right here. I've got the melted butter, and I've got my little pastry brush. When you put your butter on here, you want to go quickly, and you don't want to get too much on there, because then the batter won't stick to the pan. Now, I always say the first crepe is always a flop. It's a good one for you to test and taste and see if it's everywhere you want. But I'm just pouring the liquid in the middle. And the reason why the first one is usually a flop is because the pan's not hot enough, or it's not the right temperature that you need it to be. So I have this right now at medium heat, and I'm taking the pan, and I'm just taking and kind of swirling my crepe batter around the pan so it gets nice and thin, like we were talking about. Now, there are crepe pans that you can make crepes in. There's these really cool big ones when you go and get crepes made at a crepe place that they do it on. But for as often as we make crepes, I've never found it necessary to have a special pan for doing that. I like using the pans we have on hand. So this is just I think this is an 8-inch pan. Sometimes we do it in a 6-inch pan. Whichever way you want to do it is fine. And now we're cooking it, and I don't know if you can see that it's kind of bubbling a little bit on there. And I'm gonna wait for a few little bubbles to come inside of it, sort of like when you're watching pancakes. You can kind of see it poof a little bit, and that's when I'm gonna know it's time to flip it. Now, to flip it, you can do a couple of different things. You can have a rubber spatula like this and go under and flip it. If you are confident at the stove, you can try and be fancy and shake it around and flip it up. Now, the crepe batter has to be fully cooked on the bottom side to be able to flip it, or it's just gonna fall apart on you. And that's the part that's difficult, is you're just waiting patiently to make it
So
all
how can
happen.
you tell then, this is kind of when we make crepes like this, and we do this a lot at our French dinner party cooking classes, how can you tell when it's time to flip? How do you know it's cooked on the bottom?
Well, when I'm going like this, as you can maybe see in the pan, I'm going around, you can see it sliding around in the pan. And that's a good indicator to me that it is getting close to being, but it's not moving super fast, because otherwise it should quickly slide in the pan. So I'm turning up the heat a little bit more as we're talking here to just see if I can get it a little bit more done. And then you can take your spatula and you can kind of just go underneath and peek, which ours is good. So I'm just gonna flip it over. And you can see it's just got slightly a little bit of brown stuff on it, and I'm just letting that cook a little bit more in the pan. I usually say count to 30 on the other side as it is going to get, before you take it off the pan all the way. And then we've got some wax paper sheets here. You can use wax paper, whatever you want, and just have a place that you're gonna take them and put them onto when you get done. And then if you put the wax paper sheets in between each of your crepes, then nothing's gonna stick together as you're getting it ready. So I think it's been 30 seconds.
It's wiggling.
Yeah, and that's how you can
that's
flip
a
it.
good flip.
I know, got kind of lucky there. But again, you can see the little brown marks on top of it, which make it perfect. So now I'm just gonna take it, I'm gonna slide it out of the pan right over here, and our first crepe is done. Then I'm gonna again do the same thing for my next one. Just go quickly with the butter, pour the batter in, and you keep doing it till you get through all your batter.
Yeah, so we're gonna go live here with our call. Okay, we're back. Sorry, had a call come through. The joys of working from your phone. Okay, we're back. We've got our crepe here. Fun thing. I told you I'm not French. My French, other than very, very rough kitchen French, not good at all. But one thing that I did learn, because I love food history, like love it, is this, the coolest tradition is when you make crepes, it's kind of like your birthday every time you make it, because you are supposed to make a wish when you flip the first crepe. Now, logically this makes sense because it's kind of what Lynn said about like the first crepe is always kind of like, it might work, it might not. So maybe that's your wish. But I think that is just like the coolest tradition ever. The other thing is that in certain countries, they would hide little like charms and tokens inside of crepes.
So that like a joking hazard.
I know, right? So that you could discover who you were supposed to marry when you grew up. So if you got like a little axe inside of your crepe or pancake, that means that you were supposed to marry a lumberjack. I hope that mothers out there everywhere were like putting little tokens of like kind things and like briefcases and little medical stuff. I don't know. I think that that's a lot of like, it's a little kind of matchmaking business going on there.
I think so.
I think a lot of grandmas and great aunties were involved in that process, not just mothers. But I thought that was kind of fun. And the coolest thing about like all of these foods and all of the stuff that we make here at the Way Cool Cooking School, and what I love about food so much, is generally every food that we love has a story like that behind it. And so discovering all those fun things behind food is like just what brings me like the ultimate joy in the kitchen. Okay, we got a couple crepes here. Your crepe batter is gonna make about 8 crepes, so enough to serve 4. This one-time batch of batter, that 2/3 cups of flour, the 1 cup of milk, a pinch of salt, a teaspoon of vegetable oil, and 2 eggs. So that's 8, probably 6 to 7 inch crepes, lots of crepes. We're gonna fill our crepes today with some berries, some strawberries, and so I wanted to show you how to make them fancy. Of course, what you wanna do is you wanna remove the stems and not eat those. And then you can take a straw and poke it through the middle to get that to come out. Or I just kind of cut around it, the inside part there as I'm cutting. And again, I'm using the claw. I'm turning my strawberry about to give my strawberry pieces. You can cut them into chunks. You can cut them into slices. But you always want a showpiece strawberry on top. And so this is something that they call garmager, which means manager of the garden, the garmager. Garmager is kind of like the garnish station of the kitchen. And so we're gonna show you how to garnish a beautiful strawberry. And that was gonna fan out on top of your crepes. And so what you're gonna do is with your strawberry, I'm gonna hold it by the crown. I'm not gonna take the crown off because it looks prettier and I'm just gonna leave it on for this one. And I'm gonna take and I'm gonna cut. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut not all the way back. I'm not gonna cut all the way through the strawberry. I'm just gonna cut straight down 9/10 of the way through. And so what I'm gonna end up with is this. Lots of little pieces here. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my thumb and my fingers and I'm gonna push the strawberry and fan it out this way, like a little tiny strawberry deck of cards. All right, so we've got our strawberry deck of cards, and so this, when you lay it on top of your crepe, fans out and it's super beautiful that way. All right, while we're kind of setting up to do our cake here, I'm gonna give a couple shout outs. Shout out to the stall crew, Jillian and Jason and Juliet, who are watching here today. Shout out to my mama, happy early Mother's Day. And shout out to all the mamas out there, happy early Mother's Day. Brenna, oh hi Brenna and the girls, hi, thank you so much for watching today. Lynn, hey, what's up? Thank you for watching. Tanya, shout out to Tanya. Thank you for tuning in. Crystal, Chef Crystal in the house today watching along with us. And shout out to my Valerie Joe. Hi to all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching today. If you want a shout out for your little chef, make sure that you just write in the comments their names and I will totally shout them out too, because I don't care how old or how little you are, it is always awesome to like get a shout out, right? And sometimes, some days are harder than other these days. Sometimes you just need a little shout out to get your day going. Speaking of which, shout out to my Auntie Brenda. Happy Mother's Day to you early. Okay, we've got our strawberries, we've got our crepes. Whew. I feel like I need to do some stretches for this next part. This next part is homemade whipped cream. So in your kit, you only needed to use half of your whipped cream. And so the other half of the whipped cream is for you to make your own homemade whipped cream, which is why we did not use the vanilla in our crepe batter. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take, and I'm gonna show you how to whip your own whipped cream from scratch. This is what I call the Downton Abbey method, only because they did everything by hand back then. There wasn't always KitchenAid mixers, y'all. And so my tricks for making homemade whipped cream: cold metal bowl, cold whisk, cold heavy cream. Keep it all cold. We know how to do that in Minnesota, so just rock with that. But having a cold bowl is gonna ensure that everything stays cold a little bit longer as you're doing this. I'm gonna take and I'm gonna pour in my cup of heavy cream. Oh, yeah, all right. And now we do some finger stretches. We stretch it out and we whisk. And this, above all else, no circles. We're gonna go back and forth. I'm gonna get it foamy. You might see some whipped cream splash here. We're gonna get it foamy. It's gonna look like someone blew a bunch of bubbles, and milk is the first stage of whipped cream. I'm going straight back and forth. No ovals here, just left and right and 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 left and right, and you just keep going till you feel like your arm is gonna fall off. At which point, you can actually switch arms. The next stage is where I'm at right now. The foamy bubbles of milk have actually turned into like a smaller, frothier foam, and you can actually feel the heavy cream getting thicker as I'm going and doing this. And I'm gonna keep going, and I like to tilt my bowl just a little bit so I make a pool of whipped cream in the bottom, and that helps it go really, really fast. This is a super, super fun project to get everyone involved with, because at some point, your arm is going to start to cramp. Not mine, I'm breathing. As my trainer says, just keep breathing. You'll be fine, just keep breathing. All right, and now we have what we call a soft, very soft peak. Oh, gotta keep going, gotta keep going. You're gonna get to a point which I call the Dairy Queen curl peak, which is a soft peak. And if you've ever seen a Dairy Queen commercial ad, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's when I can take my whipped cream and I turn it and it curls over like a Dairy Queen ice cream curl. Still not whipped cream yet, but what it has done is it's firmed up enough that I can add some powdered sugar to sweeten it. I'm gonna add about 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar, and I'm gonna add some vanilla to add flavor to it. All right, so we got that in there. Whew, nice little break. And now we go back to it. All right, I'm gonna take, and I'm gonna, as I add this whipped cream or the powdered sugar in there, the reason you have to wait till it gets to the soft peak is because if you add the whipped cream too soon, or the powdered sugar, even the powdered sugar is too heavy, and it will deflate your whipped cream. And that, in just a matter of minutes, is how you end up with firm whipped cream. I want to eat it. I'm not going to. I'm still going to save it for the crepes. The other way to test it is to put it over your head like you see on the TV shows. I'm not going to do that because mine sticks straight up. I know it's going to work. All right. Switch arms, switch off with family members. We like to have whipped cream whip-it races here at the Way Cool Cooking School. They're pretty famous. They're infamous, maybe, more like that, to see who can whip cream the fastest. It's one of the awesome fun things we do at our summer camp program that like I have the best memories and videos of. I can't wait till all these kids graduate high school and I can present them with these videos when they're all 18. So we've got our whipped cream. This whipped cream will stay whipped cream now for a long time. I would say like a day. And you can put it in your refrigerator. You can also put it in your freezer. If you like really, really light and foamy kind of things, I like to freeze whipped cream and eat it instead of ice cream and put like caramel sauce and stuff on it. Super, super good. Put that out of our way for right now. By the magic of TV, I'm pretty sure Lynn is just going to turn those into like beautiful plated crepes for me because that's what she does. She's so good at it. All right, she's doing it now. She's whispering, but we can probably hear her because Lynn and I are not quiet people. Okay, and I'm gonna clear off this station and I'm gonna move that to the front because it is time for me to play with fondant. I have many nicknames. One of my favorites though is the powdered sugar princess, and that is because of all the times I am covered with powdered sugar when we're making homemade marshmallow fondant and playing with fondant. There's really no way around it. I will get messy. So we're gonna take, and I'm gonna start the fondant situation right now by taking and sprinkling powdered sugar all over the countertop. And then Chef Lynn, can you grab me some fondant, please? Because I did not grab the fondant pouch. My goodness, what was I thinking? How am I gonna wrap a cake in fondant with no fondant? So I'm gonna take, and we're going to lay out some powdered sugar here. I'm gonna move this back a little bit so you guys can actually see what's going on here. I sprinkle some powdered sugar the way that you would sprinkle flour when you're making sugar cookies. You do not want to use flour with fondant because it actually will dry out the fondant a little bit too much. Similar with ginger snap cookies, actually, same thing. All right, I've got a little pouch of fondant here. And what we're gonna do with this is we're gonna take, and I kind of just kneaded it inside the bag here to get it nice and soft. White fondant. Make sure your hands are clean. Make sure your hands are dry. Make sure your work surface is clean and dry. Those are some important hacks. Whatever is on your countertop will end up in your white fondant. And we want a nice white canvas for our cake. And so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna shape our white fondant into a disc, into kind of a round circle shape to get started with. And I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna press it into my powdered sugar on the table, right in front of me here. And I'm gonna take and I'm gonna grab my rolling pin and we're gonna roll this out so that it is about a 1/16 of an inch thick, or thin, I guess. And we're just gonna keep rolling. And as I'm rolling, I'm also gonna be flipping. And this is also important when you're doing this because you don't want it to stick to your countertop. Make sure that you are always flipping in between like every couple rolls so that you can stretch out your fondant and not have it stick to your countertop. It is very hard to kind of rebound from sticky fondant. So I'm gonna take, and I'm moving my powdered sugar around too. As your disc gets bigger, your powdered sugar base is gonna move. And so you wanna move that with your fondant dough. There we go. My favorite kind of fondant is marshmallow fondant. And that is what we make with marshmallows. It's really, really cool and pretty easy to do, which is also very fun. And I think I like the taste of it the best. I also like that with marshmallow fondant, you can mix in your own flavors, like Jell-O and Kool-Aid flavors, and get funky colors and different flavors, which is kind of fun too when you're wrapping cakes. And our cake is a 12-inch cake, or I'm sorry, an 8-inch cake. And so we're gonna put it on a 12-inch board, which I have right here. And I'm gonna use this as my guide for how big I need my fondant to be. So I've got my big here. I'm gonna make sure it's for sure 12 inches. So I'm gonna make it go a little bit bigger than that. I probably want it to be about 14 inches wide before I lay it on my cake. And so that's not gonna take very much longer here. And you'll notice I'm like rolling it out in different directions, and I'm not only just like flipping it over, I'm also rotating it and spinning it at least 90 degrees each time so that it still stays a circle as I'm rolling it out. Okay. And you can't smell it, but I can. Lynn took our quiche out of the oven and it smells really, really good. And so she's gonna show us that here in just a little second too. Okay, I've got this. I've got my cake board, and so now I'm gonna grab my cake. And one of the tricks for this, the cake and the cake decorating in general for this particular cake, is to keep the cake frozen as long as possible. And that is why we're gonna grab our cake out of our freezer right now. It's one of the tips I shared with us, like with the people who had the kit too, is we want to keep that cake frozen because it gives us a nice sturdy base to wrap the cake with the fondant and to make that work. Okay. Beautiful. All right. Oh, Lynn is so helpful. She's already put the first kind of blobs on there. Oh, trade that out. Here we go. We got a clean one. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to crumb coat the cake. And so I'm going to just move my fondant off, keep that off to the side there, push my powdered sugar out of the way. I'm going to turn this just a little bit more so you guys can see over here. I've got a 8-inch cake that has just got a blob of frosting on the top of it. That's it. We're going to take the rest of our white buttercream frosting. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to grab nothing more advanced than a regular kitchen butter knife out of the drawer behind me. Because we're doing a crumb coat, it does not matter if there's crumbs in it. It's called a crumb coat. And so I'm going to just take a nice blob of frosting here with the frosting that's already started on top, and I'm going to just kind of smoosh that around. This layer is really just to hold the two cake layers together. This would be if you wanted to kind of up your Mother's Day cake game a little bit, you could actually just put frosting around the edges and fill the inside with like raspberry jam, or like a lemon curd, which would be really, really good in that, or strawberries if you like strawberries, and do that too. All right, so we're good there, because I'm not gonna put a filling in this one. And then I'm gonna add my top layer of cake, and I'm gonna take and I just evenly pressure, kind of gentle but firm. I'm gonna take and I'm gonna press it down onto the cake, just to make sure those two layers come together. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna divide this frosting up. Again, this frosting is just a thin layer of glue for our cake. So it does not need to be covered. I do not care if the cake pokes through. I'm just putting it on the sides of the cake really quickly here so that you can see we're gonna have something that fondant is gonna stick to. And I'm using my windshield wiper technique where you go back and forth and kind of push the frosting, turning my cake as I go. I'm gonna smear that. The extra frosting is gonna end up at the edges of the cake, which is cool because that's what I'm gonna use to kind of frost the sides of the cake very lightly as well. Very lightly, you can see crumbs all over this, and that's fine. Again, it's also kind of a cool new cake technique. They have this like rustic cake edging that you make the cake actually look like this.
Naked cake.
Naked cake. Sounds inappropriate. We're gonna call it a rustic cake. It's a rustic cake. All right, so I'm just making sure that like every side of the cake has a little bit of frosting. The fondant is also gonna stick. I mean, it's a food thing too. The fondant is gonna stick to the cake. And I may have put a lot of extra frosting in the middle of the cake because I like the middle of the cake having lots of extra frosting. If you did that too, or you end up doing that, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. Just a little extra glue here. I am gonna clean up the edges here because I don't want fondant on the edge, outside edge there. Okay. Clean as you go. Clean as you go, especially in your mother's kitchen. Clean as you go. I feel like I learned that lesson a little late. Thanks, Mom, for being forgiving. But now it really, really is important when you're cake decorating to have like that clean surface so you feel like you've got like room to move and decorate and do what you need to do. The fondant part. This is again, be patient with yourself. This does not need to be like you see on the cake decorating things. They speed those up. Not everybody decorates a cake in 30 seconds or 30 minutes even. And so when you're doing this, you want to be patient with yourself when you're learning any new technique so that you can kind of have a little bit of space in your head and in your area to kind of get everything done. I'm going to take and I'm going to gently lift up my fondant so that I can place it evenly on top of my cake. And so I'm going to use my eyeball and I'm going to eyeball the center of the fondant with the center of the cake, and that's where I'm going to let it drape. And fondant is not about pulling or tearing. It's all about lifting and draping the fondant all over. I'll show you. Okay, so I've got my fondant and it's got powdered sugar all over it, and that's okay. And so I'm gonna take and I'm looking at where the top of the edge of my cake is. All right, and now what I'm gonna start to do, because it's gonna kind of look like I put a tablecloth on my cake and there's ruffles everywhere. And that's also kind of a fun way to decorate it too. You can actually make it look on purpose with the all ruffles and kind of fold it that way. But if you want the smooth edges, this is where powdered sugar princess comes into play. You want powdered sugar on your hands because that's gonna act as your smoother. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the palm of my hand and I'm gonna gently smooth out, now that I got it even, smooth out the top of the cake and get that laid and set into place. And then what I'm gonna start to do is I'm gonna start to kind of gently start lifting and letting the cake fondant fall. And I'm gonna take the side of my pinky here and I'm gonna press it gently along the edges of the cake. Now, I by no means am a professional cake decorator. There are tons of tutorials on how to decorate cakes. And I want you to know that this is not the only way to decorate or lay fondant on a cake. I know that some people use the rolling pin method where they roll the fondant over the top of the cake and then unroll the rolling pin. That's a cool way too. Check out lots of different ways to do things. And then you often find like the one that works best for you. This is a technique I like after doing lots of cakes. And so as I'm doing this, I'm just kind of going right around here, There we go. Oh, hey to Anna Lima and her family. Shout out to Anna, Rachel, and Allie. Thank you so much for watching. So excited to have you guys watch and do the cake later today or this weekend. That's awesome. Let's see here. Hi to Carol. There we go. All right. I got a nice, I'm happy with this. I can feel it. It feels good. It feels good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to rotate the cake a little bit, and I'm going to lay this one out, and I'm going to start so you can see there's a wrinkle. And so I'm going to take and you got to kind of re-drape and reshape this fondant. And you continue to do that all the way around the cake until the whole cake is covered in fondant. Inevitably, you'll get to the end of the cake and there will be a wrinkle. And that is, my friends, the back of your cake. It's like the seam on a perfect black dress or any outfit. You need to, it's just the back of your cake. All right, so we've got that. I've got the back of the cake. It is definitely wrinkly there. I'm doing this kind of for speed so you can see the front of the cake, but you're gonna keep working it. You lift, you drape. Now we got all this extra fondant around the edges here. And so how do I get that extra fondant off without it tearing or ripping? There's a couple different ways to do it. My favorite is a pizza cutter. And the reason why is because most homes have a pizza cutter, so it's really convenient. The other thing is that pizza cutters generally have a double-sided beveled edge, and that's gonna actually help me fold the fondant underneath the cake while removing the excess fondant that's on the cake. And so I'm gonna lean over my cake here. You can also do it this way, but then you can't see what's going on. So I'm gonna lean over my cake here. I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna start to cut. My pizza cutter is not flat, and it's not straight up and down. It is at about a 45-degree angle, and that allows me to kind of push the fondant underneath the cake and tuck it in as I'm cutting off the extra fondant. There we go. And then I just go back in and I pull that away like that. There we go. And I'm gonna use it and just kind of tuck it in on the back side there too. Get rid of my extra fondant. There we go. Brush that off. Okay. Now this is the part where the artist in me says, you got the paints, make it your own and make it special. But I am gonna kind of like show you how to apply the paint, and then you make it your own and you make it special. And so I'm gonna just take, and if we had a little bit more time, I would brush all of this powdered sugar out of the way.
Oh. Let me see if I can help you with that
thanks, because I'm a powdered sugar
Yes,
princess
you are.
now,
Maybe wash your hands for the...
Oh, okay, fine, I'll wash my hands.
Because one of the things that we've learned as you're working with cakes is if you're messy, the cake ends up looking messy. So if you stay with your hands nice and clean, your area nice and clean, you end up with a much nicer cake than if you just keep going and going and going, which is the tendency to do. So now we got a nice cleaner space for you.
Thank you so much for that. Okay,
Yeah.
I've got my paints. So these are little souffle cups. They're like 2-ounce souffle cups. You can actually get them at places like Sam's Club and Walmart and restaurant places. Sometimes dollar stores have them. They're just like 2-ounce little cups. They come with lids. It's how I divvy out my ranch for my baby carrots as well when I'm making my lunches. So there's lots of different uses for them. But what I've done is I put like probably, if you're using gel food coloring at home, like an 1/8, maybe a 1/16 of a teaspoon of gel and a tablespoon of water is all you need. If you're using regular, what I consider like normal food coloring, and this is the food coloring that came in the kit, they're just like the little eyedropper style. I probably put in like 8 drops of food coloring, and again, a tablespoon of water, because I want the colors to be super, super concentrated, and you can always make more. So we got more. So the colors I'm rocking with today, because they're the colors that came in the kit, are red. The pink I made for you guys with our gel, because this did not come with pink. And it says you can make rose, but I'll tell you, I tried. It looked like burnt sienna. And if you know your colors, that is definitely not rose. And so if you want to make burnt sienna, follow the directions on the back. If you want pink, you're going to need to get pink food coloring. I also have yellow, green, and blue. So those are all my colors right there. I'm going to scooch this back again so you guys can kind of see all those colors as we kind of go. When you're making, like if you want it to look like our demo cake, our flower cake, when we chose this one, there's a couple fun ways that you can do this actually. But this flower shape is actually constructed of a bunch of different little shapes. And I love shapes. And I love creating kind of like pictures out of abstract, smaller shapes. And so these flowers are actually a bunch of little C shapes that fold on top of each other. You just keep going to make different shapes. And most flowers are are like either the lightest in the middle or the boldest in color in the middle. And so I like them to have kind of like the lighter outside edges because then they can kind of blur into each other when you're doing the watercolor. So I'm gonna start with the concentrated colors in the center. And so that is the red. So I'm just gonna take my fun little paintbrush and I'm gonna do where I want my big power flower to be. And I'm gonna do the letter little C's or arch shapes. And I'm gonna have them feed into each other and then start to overlap each other. And these are watercolors, so they're wet and they're gonna bleed into each other, and that is the fun part. The other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to start to space out where I want the centers of my flowers to be all over the cake. I'm gonna do little ones, I'm gonna do some big ones, and I'm gonna get this all covered. And I'm not gonna do the whole cake because I want that to take time. If I wanna do this whole cake, I would wanna give myself at least 30 minutes. And y'all, we ain't got time for that. So I'm gonna show you how to do one flower, and then I'm gonna say, make it your own. I'm gonna grab my pink, and I'm gonna take my pink, and I'm gonna start just on the outside edge of where the red is. I'm gonna start adding on extra petals. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trace where my original petals were, and then I'm gonna add C shapes that kind of go in between the petals. So these are gonna look like very giant, to me, peonies, because peonies are my favorite flower. You can also, they kind of look like roses too, I guess, if you like roses. So I've got that. Then I'm gonna take and I'm gonna add in the yellow, and the yellow here is gonna, again, bleed out around these shapes, just like this. The yellow is also gonna be the color that I'm gonna use to kind of tie in the other flowers that I'm doing here. So for this flower, I'm gonna just do a little one, and so I'm gonna make this one red and yellow, and just do like a little bud there. I'm gonna go in and kind of add some little extra colors here. The colors are gonna bleed, they're gonna be awesome. And then I'm gonna add green, and I'm going to add green, and for the green for the leaves, this is where you just kind of go bloop, and you add in some little leaf shapes, then you come back and you kind of can close them off and make them into oval shapes as well, and do that. I like that some of them are really wet and well defined, and some of them are kind of dry and give you that really cool watercolor thing. I'm going to tip this tape really quickly because you can see it's starting to watercolor and drool around the edges of the cake, which is cool. So then you've got like just kind of your flower working from just like those little C shapes. That's it. I didn't do any other shape, but just like made little arcs all over the cake. And if you don't like the edges on this, you can take a paper towel and kind of smear it out. Or what I kind of did with mine is I added kind of leaves, and you can kind of do an abstract border around your cake, which is really cool too. But you make it your own. I liked kind of doing all like kind of the warm colors, the reds, the orange, the yellows for the flowers, and then the cool colors for the leaves. But if you love blue and purple and green, do that for like the big colors too. There's purple flowers out there. Make them purple or violet, whatever you like. Okay, so that is the big cake. So we've got that. I'm gonna move these off to the side because Lynn, as predicted, has made a beautiful spread of our quiche and our crepes. So this is our quiche. It just like came out beautifully and perfect. And we pulled the foil off in the last like 10 minutes so that we've got a golden brown crust.
I'll be honest with you, I forgot to pull it off and it still turned beautiful and brown.
So leave it on the whole time. Okay. And then, amazing. That was like Oprah amazing. That's how amazing these crepes turned out. I can't wait to dig into these. And so they're filled with strawberries, and then we put the homemade whipped cream on top of them with our fancy garnished strawberry. She cut a slice of quiche from the Made from TV quiche as we did that earlier today. This is like the best brunch ever. I would totally serve this to my mom. If you got the kit, you serve that up to your mama and you'd be proud of what you did. And enjoy that. And the cake, and can't wait for it. Okay, really quickly, it is time to announce, drum roll, next week's kit. This kit we are calling Monkey See, Monkey Do. And we were inspired by a really cool recipe that we found that was like all about bananas. And so in this kit, we are going to take and we are going to do a chunky monkey cookie that has bananas and chocolate chips, and it's got oatmeal in it. Super, super, super delicious. This kit also comes with Going Bananas banana cake with chocolate frosting. We put a little Laffy Taffy banana on top of there for you. So it's kind of cute there. And then last but definitely not least, one of my all-time favorites, monkey bread, which is not made with monkeys or bananas, but it's delicious, and you can pull it apart, and it's like a whole container full of like little mini donut holes, and it's so yummy and so good. Okay, so next, this is our kit. This is gonna be available to order online probably right now because Paige is really, really good at that, and you can go right onto our website, waycoolcookingschool.com, and click on our homepage, scroll down, you'll see an order now button. You click that button, you can order that kit. It's available for you for pickup for next week. We are here to announce we are bringing our adult cooking classes online. Regardless of what Timmy says, Governor Timmy, I call him Governor Timmy because I love him so much and he's doing such a great job to protect us. But we are definitely abiding by what he is giving us for guidelines and being safe here at the Way Cool Cooking School. And I love this class so much. I have taught this class for the last 6 years, this cooking with herbs class, because I'm a gardener and I love gardening. And so this class is all about cooking with herbs. And this kit is going to offer you a 3-course meal. We're going to show you how to make an herbed polenta to serve with a lemon and oregano chicken thigh. And then we're also going to have a first course, which is going to be shrimp cakes with a cilantro lime dressing salad. Oh my gosh, get in my tummy. And then as a special gift from us, we're actually going to make you dessert. And so this meal kit is going to be served with our mint and lemon pound cake. So every order is going to get 2 individual desserts that are chef made for you. So we'll make you dessert, and then you can play along with us and you can make dinner. Again, it's all included in here. Your starter with your shrimp salad with shrimp cakes. And then you've got your entree with the delicious lemon and oregano chicken. And then we're gonna show you how to do an herbed polenta. Polenta is one of those dishes that I think if you've never made it, it can kind of be intimidating. But really, it is like the best side dish and a really cool alternative for rice or pasta with your meals, especially if you're making like Italian meals. So that is our pasta kit. Our phones are ringing.
Oh, they already want.
Oh my gosh. So you can of course call us at 952-949-6799 so you can get in on one of these kits, or you can go to our website and you can order them as well. Okay. So Lynn's taking the phone call. And so it is my honor to wish all the mothers out there and grandmothers happy Mother's Day from all of us at the Way Cool Cooking School. Thank you so much for watching and having fun with us today. We can't wait for you to get back into our kitchen, but until then, we're going to bring a little bit of our kitchen into yours. Peace, be safe, be well, have a great weekend. And from the mama at Way Cool Cooking School, here she is. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Have a great day.
Bye.